All right, so that's a look at the issue that we were interrogating. The discussion is already heating up in the studio, but before I introduce you to my panelists, let's take a look at the information here. Last year's Kenya Certificate of Primary Education results reveal some worrying facts. For instance, more than 10,000 candidates scored less than 100 marks out of the possible 500. More than 200,000, representing nearly a quarter of the candidates, got less than 200 marks. The minimum requirement for Form 1 admission, plainly put, they failed the exam. Now, the results lend credence to findings on literacy levels in public primary schools by Uwezo, which we'll be hearing more about, a regional education monitoring organization, and it reveals some damning facts. For instance, 2 out of 10 Class 7 pupils cannot pass basic reading and writing tests. So that's a look at just some of the statistics, and we're going to get into them in a bit. Let's see if we can highlight them for you at the moment. And there we have it on your screens. 467,353 students scored less than 250 marks out of a possible 500 in the recently completed KCPE exams. More than 10,000 scored less than 100 out of a possible 500. Let's move on to the next one. More than 200,000 candidates scored less than 200 marks out of 500. 200,000 candidates failed to obtain minimum marks for secondary school admission. Let's see if we have any more. 1 out of 10 children in Class 8 cannot do simple Class 2 division, while 7 out of 100 children can neither read an English or Kiswahili story. 1 of 5 children in classes 6 to 8 cannot tell the meaning of the colors on the Kenyan flag. It's some statistics that we're highlighting for you. Boys generally lag behind girls in learning competencies, and 32% of boys aged 10 to 16 are functionally illiterate. And finally, I believe this is the last one, 28% of girls aged 10 to 16, compared to 32% of the boys, are functionally illiterate. And so that's just a look at the statistics, and I'd like to begin with you, Sarah, and just take us back to a little bit about your findings regarding this report and what stood out for you particularly.
I'd like to say that we have been doing the annual assessment since 2009. So what we've presented now is what we call Uwezo 4, and we have 2013 results that will come out this year. And the findings have been constant throughout the years. And this is a national assessment that we carry out in all the 158 census districts in Kenya. That means in all the counties. The findings have been constant, that only 30% of the children are at the level which they ought to be. That means when we look at the KCPE results, we are looking at the end of the pipeline, so to speak, of these first 8 circles.
Okay.
But maybe we need to be turning our attention to when the children enter school. Are they learning at the level which they ought to be? Because perhaps that is where we can now catch the problem. So that if for whatever reason it's only the brighter children who are being taught in schools, and therefore they're the ones who go on to secondary school, we need to put in mechanisms to find out and identify these children.
All right, I'll come back to you in just a moment. Mr. Governor, you were on TV and in a sense condemning, correct me if I'm wrong, teachers for this problem. You think teachers are to blame?
Yes, Janet, I think the teachers will definitely take a bigger portion of the blame. Obviously, education is a collective responsibility. Many stakeholders come into play. We have the parents, we have the teachers, we have the students themselves, we have the community at large, we have the TSC, we have the NAT, we have a whole lot of stakeholders coming into play. But where I had particular issue with the teachers, particularly in our county, and this of course applies also to many other counties, is that, and I was categoric, and I want to repeat without fear of contradiction, that where a teacher has been in a school principal for 4, 5, 6, 7 consecutive years, and every year his class or his school is failing, is trailing the country, and yet he wants to be left to continue there, and does not come out, for instance, clearly to say why, or it's not for change, then I think definitely those are not the kind of people who will bring about the change we want. And that was really my position.
All right.
And still remains my position.
Are teachers to blame?
No?
No.
It's not a teacher as such. We can't pinpoint a teacher and say they are to be blamed. He's put it correctly. There are many other stakeholders who contribute to that performance, good or otherwise.
But how much of a concern is it to you that a lot of people believe that teachers are to blame?
It's a misconception. Like the governor is talking about this county, for example. There's something called teacher shortage. Does he know how many teachers a county requires and how many are on duty? It is astronomical, the difference between those who are supposed to be on duty and those who are actually on duty. So we have a situation where we have a teacher handling double or 3 times the number of children is supposed to handle since 2003. NAT has been talking about the employment of teachers continuously. To what effect? Almost nil. No, government is not reacting.
Are you concerned about these, the lack of enough teachers? Government isn't hiring enough teachers. What do you have to say about that?
There is a concern about what outcomes we are getting at the end of the primary level education. But it's not about just the number of teachers. It's a collective of responsibility. There are a multiplicity of issues that lead to such performance at the end of 8 years. So what takes place in the classroom? If I'm a teacher and I go to class, what takes place in that classroom? Does learning occur? Do we want to say that if we have surplus teachers, then learning will occur? Are those few teachers in classroom able to deliver in the classroom? So there is a multiplicity of reasons that could be causing this. And we cannot just lay blame on one particular area and say this is the source of the problem.
So when you talk about a multiplicity of issues, what's being done to address them? Because the problem is persisting. Nothing's changing. So what happens?
We are now looking at evidence-based research that has brought about issues like what my friend Sarah Ruto is talking about. And we want to bring the stakeholders together to discuss these issues because it's not a one-person solution. The teacher on his own in the classroom may not achieve what we expect of him. This teacher has to get the support of the administration. They have to get the support of the parent. They have to nurture that child through different stages of development. And so when we just say the teacher has failed, we may be accusing the teacher, yes, because he or she is an integral part of the system, but there is more to it. And we need to come to the table and discuss these issues and come up with solutions.
What do you think, as someone speaking on behalf of the teachers, what do you think is the core issue then? You're saying it's not necessarily teachers. The governor has said the same. It's a multiplicity of factors. Ministry has said the same. So then what do you think needs to change in order to see this reversing, to see the literacy levels go down and see our students start to perform better?
First of all, there's a misconception like KNUT is defending teachers per se, irrespective of whether the teacher is wrong or right. That's not the case. What you are talking about is that to address this issue over time, more than 10 years, KNUT has been making noise about, first of all, the adequacy of teachers to teach in the classrooms. Although he has pointed out that it may not be the sole solution to this problem, but also look at a situation where we are in the report, that the West report, they are talking about facilities like books and so on, the ratio, and it's also contributing greatly to the performance you are dealing with. Then 3, if there will be issues, already there are issues about actual teaching in the classroom, who is supposed to find out, to tell the public, to tell the governor, to tell you and everybody else that, oh, there's a problem in this classroom? Is it everybody else or there's a particular arm of government that's supposed to do that? The DIQASO, the quality assurance and standards, what's their report? Have they relegated their responsibility to the NGO?
Yeah.
They are being paid by the taxpayer is paying them. Want to see their report? What are they doing? Before you come to blame this teacher at the end of the cycle of 5, 8, or whatever number of years that they are not doing well, what has been? How did we have paid the DIQASO people? How have they been checking before the problem comes to the end at the end of the 8th year? What have they told us in class 2?
Okay, Sarah, before I come to you, Governor, you were saying that you found this principal has been in the school has continued to perform poorly. Did you go deeper and try and understand why, in your view, that principal is not delivering? Are there certain issues, root causes that are not being looked into?
I think it boils down to dedication. Because if I'm a principal of a school that has consistently underperformed and actually failed, like in my case, some of the schools being mentioned have for the last 10 years been basically scoring less than 100. And the principal is the same, literally. Now, if I was that principal, I should have really raised an alarm, whether to TSC or to NAT or to the parents or to whoever is another a stakeholder that can be of help. And if I don't get any help, then at least I should protect my name and have the moral responsibility even to quit.
Yeah.
But when I just continue in a school and as though nothing is happening, and that it's like the status quo is what I continue to accept, then really I think as a teacher I'm not up to my moral responsibilities.
Were any of these principals defensive? Did you actually approach them and ask them what's going on here?
Well, we did call the principals for engagement, for dialogue basically, and they opted to not to come, because apparently we did say that principals who are not performing need to be dealt with, and that remains our position. Because if surely nothing is seen to be happening, then I don't know what can bring about a change. Let me confirm, in the interest of everybody, that as county governments and as county governors for that matter, and I can comfortably say I'm speaking for all the 47 governors here, that we have a huge moral responsibility to protect education in our counties. Some of the teachers in my county in the last 2 days have been shouting in the streets saying that we do not report to the county government or to the governor for that matter, and that they report to TSC or that they report to the ministry. But it's like they're forgetting that the children they're teaching, they also have responsibility on them. Those are children of the county, not necessarily children of the TSC or children of other stakeholders.
Yeah, it comes down to
and
being
therefore
about the students.
we are major stakeholders in education, even though it's not a devolved function fully, and we will want actually to be seen to be major stakeholders, and we will take responsibility for ensuring the goodness of the same.
All right.
I just wanted to point out, Janet, our friend Bwana Kirapa talked about quality assurance and standards officers. They are doing their work as required, but the quality assurance and standards officer is not going to come to your class with a cane and beat you into submission and to do what you're supposed to do.
So how do you monitor, though? Isn't there some monitoring that needs to
There
take
is a system in place, and the quality assurance and standards officers do their work in the field. But then once that is done, nobody is going to beat you into submission to do your to take up your responsibility.
But the student that suffers, sorry, you wanted to say something?
Yes, the reality is, and let's talk the truth here, the quality and standards department has collapsed in Kenya. It is not as effective as it was 10 years ago. The personnel that are in the field under quality and assurance standards are maybe a tenth of what we require. Two, it's not that they come with a stick to cane a teacher to do something. You see, we are talking about even the best performing person would do better if it's well supervised. You are doing well, but if you are well supervised, you'll even do much better.
I agree.
There is no quality and quality inspection that is going on the way we used to. Of course, we don't want to imagine that they will come again with the way they used to in the colonial days. But even just coming to school, some schools, by the way, the government is talking about 10 years. If you went deep, you'll discover that some school has not been inspected for the last 10 years. That's not the work of NAT. NAT is not to go and inspect schools.
When we talk about supervision, Janet, supervision begins in the school. It's school-based. It begins with the head teacher in the school. It begins with the school management committee. It begins with the parent. You cannot just imagine that the quality assurance and standards are going to supervise what goes on in the school on a day-to-day basis. Everybody has a responsibility to demand that what is being delivered is what is required. It's an issue of accountability mechanisms within our system.
We're certainly going to come back to this. I want to ask Sarah, what do you recommend? You've seen the report, you've gone out there, you've done the research, you know the numbers, you see them. What do you think needs to be done?
I think at system level, we could see a little bit more improvement. And I think both my two brothers over here are over defensive about the various departments they are in. Just taking one aspect of teachers, our evidence shows that on any given day, 10 out of 100 teachers are not in school.
10 out of 100 teachers are not in school.
They're not in school. It's improved. Before it was 13. We hope that this year's results will be slightly. There could be a myriad of reasons over there. But if a teacher is not in school and 13 out of 100 children are not in class, therefore that's a responsibility of parents, then how will learning happen? So I think that there's also some level of accountability that can be improved on the level of the teachers. There's 90 who are in school, and that is good. But I think let us not cover our eyes and say everything is okay. There's always room for improvement. The same way as various methods of supervising, but also giving teachers capacity. So it's not just about supervision, but do teachers get the kind of support that would help them to teach a little, to be better teachers? And I don't think so.
Okay.
So most of the time teachers have been left to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah.
And so when you're talking about a system of capacity building, let us not leave it to teachers to go for higher education on their own. There needs to be a system that the ministry has seen and has decided that these are the skills we need that will improve pedagogy.
Okay. How many of these schools were public and how many were private in the assessment you carried out?
We only visit public primary schools because we feel that that is where our taxpayers, and we go to about almost 5,000 public primary schools, and they're about 23,000. So that is a good number that can give us evidence about what is happening in our schools.
Okay. All right. We still need to come back in a few minutes because in as much as we're kind of getting a feel of the different issues that are rising, we need to arrive at some sort of, I guess solution is far-fetched, but what can be done as of tomorrow? Because there's a lot of worried parents sitting in the house feeling as though what's happening? I mean, I'm investing in my child going to school, but he's coming back and he's barely able to read or write. So we're going to